Hello, everyone. We are going to give folks about 1 minute to join us here and make sure that they are connected and can hear us and see us. We cannot hear or see you because this is a webinar, but I can see that you are there and we are very happy you're here. We will get started in about 40 seconds. All right. Well, I have 3:01 on the dot, so we are going to go ahead and get started. I would like to welcome everyone and thank you for taking some time out of your day today to join us for this webinar for our members. If you've not met me before, I'm Dr. Jamie Malberg. I am Phi Theta Kappa's Senior Director of Engagement for Division 4, and I am just delighted again that you are all here with us today. Our session is tailored to our members who are aspiring to attend medical school or graduate school in the health sciences, and we are joined by some incredible presenters who are here to share their experience, their insight, and answer your questions. And speaking of questions, I briefly mentioned before this is a webinar, so we cannot see or hear you. So if you do have a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. I think it should be on the bottom of your screen. But please use that Q&A function or the chat function to answer, to ask a question. I will be monitoring those throughout the presentation. So we'll make sure we answer as many questions as we can at the end of today's session so that we're not kind of interrupting as the flow of the session today. So without any further ado, it is my delight to introduce our keynote presenter for today. Sachi Chaudhary is a third-year MD PhD student at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. She graduated from The Ohio State University as a moral excellence scholar with a major in microbiology. Her interest in medicine stemmed from playing piano in hospitals and nursing homes, for which she received the President's Volunteer Service Award. She enjoys giving back to her community, serving as a Girls on the Run coach, a STEM mentor for local schools, and a street medicine volunteer. Passionate about research, she studies the immune system in various contexts, including neurological stress, transplantation, and cardiovascular disease. And I'm going to turn it over to Sachi.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm here to just tell you a little bit about my journey and some tips and advice I have for anyone who's interested in medical school or a PhD in graduate school. So we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, so the way the talk is going to go today is we're going to describe what is medical school, what does it entail, what is graduate school, and sort of the differences, as well as what is a combined dual degree, like an MD PhD program. We're going to talk about why you may want to pursue some of these degrees and then the application process. And we're going to focus mostly on the medical school application process because it is quite lengthy and it's one that I'm more familiar with. All right, so beginning off the bat with graduate school, when we think of graduate school, we think of kind of just a continuation of undergraduate. You're taking more advanced courses, diving deeper into material on a specific topic. When you're diving deeper into these topics, you're going to start to ask questions and really innovate and come up with new ideas and new questions to answer. You're going to learn a lot about experimental design, how to answer these questions that you propose in a manner that is robust and rigorous, and then potentially take some of the ideas that you learn and apply those to different specialties, which is where innovation can come in. So there's many different types of graduate school programs. You can earn a master's degree, which focuses more on digging deeper into into the material versus a doctoral degree, which is the PhD or an MD, where you're really, really diving deep into a specific concept and doing research on that concept of interest. So the average PhD timeline and sort of the way that you can go about getting a PhD is if you start the first 2 to 3 years with courses, so just diving deeper into like health sciences classes, you can pick a specific topic. Like currently, I'm in the immunology track where I'm focusing mostly on immune responses. So I'm taking courses, and then after you finish your courses, you're going to take what's called a qualifying exam, which just reviews everything you've learned and ensures that you understand the material. In the last few years, you're going to pick a topic of interest and really ask a big question and then defend that proposal of whatever you researched. So there's plenty of potential career opportunities after you have a PhD or a master's degree. Sometimes when we think about these advanced degrees, we think about mostly university professors or lecturers, or just a research scientist. But there's actually so much you can do with these degrees. You can stay in academia, which is mostly associated with a university. You can go into industry and really branch out into research and development into specific pharmaceutical companies or biotech businesses. You can go into nonprofit and advocacy, as well as starting your own business or learning to communicate and being more on the public health front. So, what is medical school? So, medical school is similar to graduate school, but you're focusing more on human physiology and anatomy, and particularly um, applying what you learned to treating patients. So, you're going to dive into more advanced courses, which is very similar to graduate school, but something that's different is you're really going to be applying what you learn into the clinic. A lot of it's based on team-based learning. You're going to be working with a lot of different people in a lot of different scenarios and environments, and you'll encounter a lot of ethical challenges or situations that may be different or unique. So every day can be a little different based on who you meet and what your cases are like for that day. And so it can be a lot physically and emotionally because you're treating a whole person. So the timeline for medical school entails that the first 2 years is usually dedicated to classes and learning the foundations of medicine. So you're going to be taking those core blocks like anatomy, physiology, organ specific blocks where you tackle each organ system individually, as well as learning pharmacology and treatments and histology. So all of those core foundational uh, courses are going to be taken within the first 2 years. Then you're going to be taking this exam called the USMLE Step 1, which basically and makes sure that you understand and that you basically know all of the foundational skills that you learned in the first 2 years. And years 3 and 4 is when you start to go into the clinic and you start to apply what you've learned into each specialty of interest. So that's when you do your clerkships or your clinical rotations. And then you take a second exam called the USMLE Step 2, which is more focused on clinical practice and how you would treat someone or how you would diagnose or the process of problem solving for cases. So there's also a lot of different career opportunities for an MD. You don't have to practice clinically. You can go into academic medicine and become more of an educator. There's also a lot of individuals with an MD who pursue clinical research and focus more on clinical trials and go into pharmaceutical businesses to help on that front. Public health is also huge. You can do programs like Doctors Without Borders as far as global health goes, as well as become more of an advisor for policies. Healthcare leadership is also a big potential opportunity where you can learn how to manage clinical practices. And then there's also other career paths, including medical writing or journalism, and potentially even doing telemedicine, which is growing a lot now these days. So the program that I'm in is called an MD PhD program, which just basically combines both the PhD and the MD. So it's a dual degree. It's an 8-year long program in which you get both an MD and a PhD. The goal is to ultimately become a physician scientist, where you learn and you gain those clinical skills, as well as the scientific thinking and reasoning to go along with that, so you can ask questions that can directly apply to patient care. So the timeline for an MD PhD will vary by school, and usually it consists of the first 2 years being more dedicated towards medical school. So you follow the first 2 years of medical school, go through those organ specific blocks, those foundational courses, and then you take your step 1 exam. And then after step 1, there's some flexibility where you can go into graduate school right away and get your PhD, and then come back to medical school at the end and take step 2 and then graduate. There's also some other paths where you can do some of those clinical rotations before you go into graduate school. So, similar to the graduate and medical career opportunities that are available, MD PhDs have quite a broad spectrum of career opportunities that we can do. We can go into academia or industry, again, public health or more policy focused, as well as a lot of MD PhDs have their own startup companies focused on researching or developing technology for the clinic. If you're interested in medicine or science, but maybe don't want to pursue these specific avenues of advanced degrees, there's also other career opportunities for you. You can go into more healthcare administration or managerial roles. There's also nurses or physician assistants and therapists, pharmacies. Every department in the clinic has technicians and technologists, including the surgery department, radiology, pathology. So there's a lot you can do within the hospital, and these types of roles have often more direct patient interactions where you're seeing and you're following up with patients regularly. On the science front, you can also be a technician where if you enjoy performing experiments rather than designing them, a technician can be something that's for you, where you perform experiments, or as a lab manager, you can manage people in the lab, coordinate projects, and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunities. Okay, so digging deeper into why you might want to go into these types of schools, we're going to start out with graduate school. So, graduate school is especially helpful if you have a particular niche that you find interesting. So, for me, that was the immune system, where I just found how our body protects ourselves against pathogens particularly interesting. And I wanted to really dive deeper into this area um, of research. So, if you find something that you really, really like and that you want to go way deeper into and potentially ask more basic questions that you can find and develop new ideas for, this might be a career path for you. It's a lot of intellectual fulfillment. You get to be really creative and think outside of the box. You're always trying to come up with new ideas, new solutions to current problems or limitations, and really try to advance whatever field you're in. Medical school is really personally fulfilling because you get to directly impact someone's life, right? You have this ability to connect with a family, a whole unit of individuals, and really heal them and guide them through a really like vulnerable and challenging time throughout their lives. So it's really impactful, and you're constantly learning along the way. So it's a really great career for like more human connections and learning more about physiology. And so, if you're like me and you like a little bit of both, you like asking those questions and you like connecting with individuals, then you might consider doing a dual degree program. And I know it does sound like a lot of time, like 8 years is a lot of time to dedicate to both of these, but it is really fulfilling and it goes by really fast. Um, so it's a great path. All right. So now we're going to dive deeper into the application process. So we're going to talk about basically step by step how you should consider applying to medical school as well as graduate school, the exams that you need, some essays and the application components, and some of the undergraduate experiment experiences that might be particularly helpful for you, as well as how to decide what school is right for you. So the first step along the MD and MD PhD application process is the testing. So this one test called the MCAT, it has to be taken for medical school admissions processes. It's a really long test that has four main blocks. It has a chemical and physical foundations block, a critical reading and reasoning and analysis section, a biology focused section, and then a more psychological and social section. And so each of these takes about 95 minutes to complete. And so the whole test is quite long. It's around 6 hours and 15 minutes. So this is often what determines baseline schools or like the schools that you should apply to. So it is quite a large test um, to study for and to dedicate time to ensure that you can complete. So, how would I suggest studying for the MCAT? I think practice is the most vital. There's a lot of online free tests as well as ones that you can pay for. Um, I would consider doing quite a few practice exams. It takes quite a bit of time to just get used to sitting there for that long of a test. It's probably the longest test you've ever taken up till that point. So it's definitely something to just practice getting into the zone and sitting for 6 hours to take that test. Once you take a few practice exams, I think it's good to go over weak areas that you notice. So, this exam is really focused on giving you passages or graphs or tables or scenarios and having you answer questions about those passages. So, it's going to be more application based. So, that's why I suggest taking practice exams first and then highlighting areas that maybe you don't know much about a specific biological process, and then diving deeper into those biological processes and studying the questions that you get wrong, and then following up with more practice. For most students, the critical reasoning and analysis skills tends to be the most difficult section because they do give quite complex passages that can be difficult to read. And so, one suggestion I have is just to start early and try doing at least one passage a week where you can just read something and answer a few questions. So, it helps break up your study and it helps you get familiar with the types of passages that you're going to be seeing. And so, if you have any questions about studying for the MCAT, um, you can ask it at the end. Um, but I am happy to answer any questions about that. Unfortunately, the MCAT might not be the only test that you have to take for medical school. Depending on what school you apply to, they might ask for other types of tests, including the Casper or the Preview. So these are more based on ethical scenarios. So they're going to give you a prompt and then ask you in an essay style question to answer the prompt, and defend your answer. And the questions are more geared towards ethical challenges, moral dilemmas, um, and more about like how you think about the world and about the situations. So the Casper is actually the one that has typed responses and even video responses. And then the preview has multiple choice responses, but very similar in that they're both about ethics in general. And it depends on what school you apply to as far as which one requires the Casper and which one requires the preview, or that school itself might have their own type of ethical test that they want you to take. But just something to keep in mind before you go into the application process to make sure you check it off for each school that you're applying to so you don't miss anything. Okay, so next we're going to start diving into the AMCAS, which is the application that you would complete to apply to MD and MD PhD programs. And I have the link here for anyone who is in the process of applying or wants to learn more about this interface. So we're going to go into each section of the AMCAS application and really I'm going to show you some sample boxes, like how you would complete the information and what they ask for. So you can get a good idea of everything you need for this application. So starting very basic, it's like any other application. They ask for a lot of personal information, including identifying information, all the schools you've attended, including high school, colleges, even so like any college you've ever attended or taken classes at. They would like transcripts from all of those schools, and then they ask for more biographical information. They ask you to list out all of your courses in addition to providing the transcripts from your schools. So this is a really time-consuming task and very detail-oriented. So you want to make sure that everything you fill out is accurate, because when they cross-check it with your transcripts, you don't want any flags to be raised. So they'll ask you to put in all of this information for each class that you take. Each college level class that you take. Specific medical schools and programs will ask you to take a certain number of science classes. And so here I just listed the basics that most medical schools will ask you to complete, but this is not for all. This is just a standard. So I would definitely check which school you're applying to and whether they require any additional classes as well. So most schools will ask that you take 2 semesters of biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, and calculus. And then classes with a lab, they would ask you to take the lab. So like biology, I think usually has a lab, chemistry, organic chemistry, and physics are the main ones with the lab. Statistics, they do ask that you take 1 semester of statistics. Usually there's a life sciences statistics that is more applicable if you're heading into a career for the life sciences. So that can be helpful, especially nowadays if there's statistics options with more programming coursework, that might be a better option and help you stand out on some of these applications, especially as we're moving towards more advanced technology. It's beneficial to have at least some familiarity with some programming or a basic AI course or things like that. Biochemistry is often recommended or strongly encouraged, and I would recommend that you take biochemistry to help with the MCAT preparation. And psychology and sociology is often also required, depending on the school, for at least 1 semester. And again, I also recommend taking a psychology and sociology class to help with that MCAT preparation. So the next part of the AMCAS application is listing out your work and your activities. So you have up to 15 entries and you have 700 characters per entry to summarize what you did. And we'll talk about a few examples and like categories of entries on the next few slides. Out of these 15 entries, there are 3 that you can list as being your most meaningful. And so these are experiences that basically you get another 2 paragraphs to really explain more about these experiences and how they have transformed your experience and how they've made you more interested in pursuing a medical degree. So these are the different kind of buckets that they have available. So for each work or activity that you list, you have to group them under these categories. There are many listed here. What I recommend is going through and trying to already jot down every activity that you're completing and which bucket it falls in. I recommend generally having a very diverse application where you try to cover as much as you can the different gamuts that they ask for. So the bolded ones are the ones that I put on my application. So out of the 15, I tried to spread them across all of these different categories. So I had a few service um, activities, some that were medical, some that were not medical. I listed extracurricular activities and hobbies, um, especially if there are things that you're really passionate about and that you like to spend a lot of time about, it can help advance your application by including those activities and hobbies. Um, any honors, awards, or recognitions, any athletic clubs that you may be partaking in. Leadership is kind of the uh, bucket that if it doesn't fit anywhere else, you put it into the leadership bucket, especially if you have a title for a specific organization. It can ask about your military service, any paid employment, shadowing activities, posters, publications, research, etc. If there are particular activities, perhaps like a presentation on posters that you just, um, there are like multiple presentations and posters that you had, you can group them together and list it as one activity. And we'll kind of look at that on the next slide. So this is what you would fill out on your work and activity section. So it's going to ask you for the type of experience, which was one of those categories on the previous slide, the name of that experience and the organization. It's going to ask you for a contact. So as you start to complete these experiences, I really recommend that you make a journal with at least one person's contact information for each experience, just so you have that list that it's easier to go back to rather than digging through your email. If it's right there planned out, then it's much easier to go back to. It's also going to ask for the start date and the end date. If the start date is vague, I usually do it at the start of the month, like the first day that you started that experience. And if the end date is ongoing, there's also a button that you can say that it's when the anticipated end date would be. It's going to ask you for your number of hours. So just another thing to kind of think about as you start to complete these experiences is to try to write down as much information about the experience, including the hours, as you can, just so it's easier to go back to. And then you're going to have 700 characters to describe the experience. So if I have a service activity that I was partaking in and I want to describe it, there are certain ways that you can go about doing it. What I generally recommend to individuals is to try to create a story for that experience. So if you think of someone reading through your whole application, it can get really boring really fast if you're just listing out what you're doing for each activity. So for instance, if I said I'm serving as a musical therapist at the hospital, if I just said I played the piano on the fifth floor of the hospital, that doesn't really help like entice the reader to keep reading. So you want to try to like think about a particular instance within that experience. Like, is there a particular interaction that you had, something that really made a difference or was impactful in this activity? And then write about that instance and try to include um, like all of your responsibilities and a story into this description. You just want to try to make it as engaging as possible and really emphasizing what you learned from this activity. The last sentence for each of my work and activities descriptions is usually some connection to how this activity is going to help me become a better physician. So just tying it back to this overall story of why are these activities helping me as a person and helping me pursue my goal of medicine? So I think that's also something that's beneficial to have. And then there's this checkbox that you can select if this is your one of your most meaningful experiences and an experience that you want to write more about. So if you say yes, then it gives you another little box with more characters where you can dive deeper into that experience. So again, this would be like another story or another way describing how this activity is impactful to you. So going back into like service activities, um, if you're a part of an organization that has like multiple events, and those are all service events, you can group those together and then just list out like the events and the experience description. Or if you have multiple poster presentations about a particular project, you can list those poster presentations and group them together. So that way you don't waste any work or activity boxes. I would also recommend that you try to fill up to the 15. Try to use as many as you can, and definitely try to select um, three of the most meaningful, just so you can show everything you've done and give you the maximum amount of space in order to talk about your experiences. So the next part is the letters of recommendation. So, usually, medical schools are going to ask for particular people to write your letters of recommendation, which we're going to talk about. In the application system itself, you can only upload a maximum of 10. Um, Once you upload those to the general application system, you can individually assign which person's letter you want to go to which school in this system. So each medical school will not get all of your letters. You can assign each letter individually. And this is the information that you're going to have to fill out for each letter writer. So just another standard after going through most schools' requirements. Usually, schools will require at least two letters of recommendation from professors within the sciences. They'll require at least one from a professor who is not in the sciences. So I recommend having like a few options, maybe just getting three or four from individuals in the sciences if you can, and two from individuals who are not in the sciences, just so you have a backup in case timing is of the issue or something goes wrong. Every research opportunity that you have, it's really beneficial to get a letter from the research supervisor or a postdoc within that lab, just someone who can attest to your research skills. And this is especially helpful if you're applying into the MD PhD program. There are these things called committee letters, and it depends on your school if they have them or not. But basically, it's like a consolidation of letters that are created by your advisors or counselors in your school. So I recommend talking to any of the guidance counselors, the pre-med advisors on whether they have those letters or not. If they do have those letters, it's recommended that you submit them. And if your school doesn't, then you don't have to worry about it. And then just another thing that I would recommend is having at least one from a community member or just a service organization that you're a part of, but someone maybe who's not a professor or not a direct supervisor who can attest to your more personable characteristics. So the next parts of the AMCAS application are the essays. And so these are another, just like this is another space to talk more about why you want to go into a medical career. So it's 5,300 characters, which is about like, I would say 5 to 6 paragraphs about why you want to go into medical school. They give some specific questions that can help you think about what you want to talk about in your personal statement. So some of those questions include why have you selected the field of medicine? What motivates you to learn more about medicine? And what do you want the schools to know about you that you haven't already talked about in your application? So this is really important. When you go through your application, you want to try not to duplicate any stories or experiences. You want to try to um, make sure that you fill each space with something different about yourself. And so that when they puzzle piece it together, they have the whole picture of who you are and why you want to do medicine. And so the personal statement doesn't have to be one really long essay about a particular instance that inspired you to go into medicine. I know some people feel particularly constricted if they don't have a particular instance that was like life-changing for them that triggered their interest in medicine. What I tended to do, because for me it was more of like a logical thought process of like I tried out different career paths. I explored a bit and then found something that I really liked and then dove deeper into it. So I kind of talked about my trajectory and how I ultimately found myself drawn to medicine. So you can talk about like different stories or experiences and how that brought you to medicine and how you're going to, what you're going to bring to the field of medicine. Some things that you can also include are any hardships, obstacles, or challenges that might have impacted your educational career or your decisions. Something to also include in the personal statement is anything that might, um, any commentary on any like thing that you noticed about your academic record. So if you have a particular instance where maybe you didn't do so well in a particular class, or maybe you don't have a particular experience that you know that's kind of required for these applications, like you can talk about it in your personal statement about sort of like a justification or a reasoning because you won't get other space in the application to talk about that. So if you're only interested in the medical school, that's where you stop and that's where you submit your application. If you're interested in an MD PhD career, there's 2 other essays that you have to complete. The first is an MD PhD essay. It's 3,000 characters, which is like 3 to 4 paragraphs, and it's more targeted towards why you want a PhD in addition to the MD. So this can be a little tricky because sometimes I feel like we put a lot of that into our personal statement, but the personal statement should be more focused towards medicine and why you want to be a physician. And the MD PhD essay should be more focused on that PhD side and why do you need that extra um, training in scientific methods in order to become a physician scientist? Like, where do you see yourself using this degree? And then there's another essay that's 10,000 characters. You have up to 10,000 characters for this essay, and it's the significant research essay. And so this is just basically um, talking about each of your research experiences. So if you had like summer internships or you've worked in a lab, this is a space to talk about what you did in that lab, what you learned. And they do want specific information like your supervisor's name, the affiliation, which school, how long you were in that experience. They want to know your specific contributions. So try not to use we as much in this essay. Try to describe exactly how you contributed to this project. And so be able to like distinguish what you contributed versus what the team contributed. So they want to know how you helped advance this project. And then they also want to know some background about the project. But I would say that the background is much smaller, so don't focus too much on the science. Mostly focus on what you did, what you learned, and how that's going to make you a better researcher. And then close to the end, some of the last steps is adding your schools of interest. So usually individuals apply to about 18 schools. And so selecting the right group of schools can be really important, especially for medical school applications, because there's a lot of options, there's a lot of individuals applying. So it's important to be able to um, pick schools that are right for you and right for your application in order to be the most competitive for those programs. So generally, depending on who you talk to, there are these three categories of schools that are called like the reach schools, target schools, and safety schools. So there are these online calculators that you can use where you put in like your test scores, your experiences, um, your GPA, the classes you took, and like how many hours of volunteer service shadowing you have. And then it kind of generates this list of schools that might be like above your reach with like us that usually accept students with a higher MCAT score, for instance, schools that are within your target range, and then schools that you're actually an over competitive applicant for. So we recommend that you usually target about 40 to 50% of your schools should be in that target group. And then you should have a few schools in the reach and then a few in the safety buckets, just to cover the whole um, spread of potential schools that you can apply to. It is quite costly, this whole medical school application process, and it's something to keep in mind, especially as you're going through the process. As of right now, the baseline application costs 175 to submit to the first school, and then every additional school that you apply to is around 46 dollars. And so right when you think you're done and you submitted that application, you're going to get each school that you applied to individually send you back a secondary application that's specific to that school. And so this might seem really repetitive, but it's just that school trying to determine, are you really interested in them? So it's going to ask you questions like describe yourself. And it's going to be really hard because you want to try to, again, describe yourself in a way you haven't really done with your primary application. So it can be a little difficult, but you're going to try to include any experiences that you have not talked about in your primary application. Most of the secondary applications will ask questions like, why are you interested in our school? Tell us how you're going to contribute to our school, or what specifically in the research department in our school are you interested in? And so researching that school is going to be really important for secondary applications in their mission overall. And then they can ask many other questions. Most will ask about failures and how you've overcome them, challenges, moral or ethical dilemmas. And then a big one is diversity initiatives and how would you contribute to a school's diversity. And so these applications often do also require you to pay to complete the secondary applications. So, something to keep in mind again. And then once you get your secondary application submitted, it'll take some time for you to start getting the interview requests back. And so there's many different types of interviews that you can have. And so these are just a few where you can have like traditional one-on-one interviews. You can have a group panel interview where there's like a panel of people asking questions. You can have a group interview where you're with multiple applicants and there's a moderator who kind of asks you all questions and kind of is there looking at how well you get along with others. And then there's these things called the multiple mini interviews, which are more like um, more questions that have like open-ended answers. And so there's going to be one-on-one 7-minute interviews, and there's usually like 8 of those. And they're timed, and they'll ask you a particularly open-ended question and kind of chat back and forth with you and see how well you defend your answer. But this is far in the future, so we won't talk too much about the interview process. So this is the overall timeline um, of a traditional um, application year. So usually you're going to take the MCAT, common to take it like January to May. Um, and then the primary application, that AMCAS application, opens in usually in June. Um, and so once that opens, you want to try to complete that primary application as quickly as you can because it does require a revision process that can take up to 6 weeks before your application is processed. So you submit your application and then they have to check and make sure that they have like the transcripts and that the transcripts match the courses that you entered. And so once that revision process is done, then it gets sent out to schools. And then you'll start to get those secondary applications in the fall, and interview requests will come in late fall and throughout the winter. Most schools are on a rolling basis, so it's often first come, first serve as far as interviews. So that's why timing is quite important. So if you know you're going to be applying, it's best to try to submit that primary application as soon as possible and submit those secondary applications as soon as possible. Because as soon as they read your application, they're going to decide whether you get an interview spot or not. And if you're in the early group, it can be beneficial. And we're going to touch very quickly on the PhD application process. It's quite similar. There are going to be specific courses that you have to take, but these are going to be really school specific and kind of area specific, depending on what type of PhD you want. Research experience is going to be really important for a PhD application. They're going to ask to make sure that you have completed a project and have some output. Generally, this can be like a poster presentation, a publication, an abstract, anything to kind of suggest that you completed a project from the start to the end and was involved with thinking of the question, designing the experiment, and then analyzing the results. You're going to take an exam called the graduate record examination, which we'll talk about in a little bit. You're going to need a personal statement more geared towards why you want to do research, letters of recommendation from your PIs or research supervisors are going to be the most important again, just to say how qualified you are as a researcher. And then there's going to be transcripts and interviews involved as well. And so the GRE is kind of like the MCAT, but it's for the PhD application process. And so these are the different categories that a GRE has. It has a verbal and reading section, vocabulary and reading section, a more mathematical, like arithmetic analysis section, and then there's an essay. And so um, I haven't taken the GRE, so I'm not as familiar with it, but here are like the timing and the general scoring for these sections. All right, so I know that was like a really fast whirlwind of everything. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me um, with specifics, and I'm happy to talk and chat with any of you or give you specific examples about applications.
Thank you so much. That was such good information for everybody. I am going to take just a minute or two, I think. And again, we'll keep monitoring the chat and have time for questions and share contact information and all that good stuff. So I learned a ton. Thank you so much. But I am going to go just very quickly through some of the ways that your PTK membership can kind of help support your success. You heard about all of the things that you need to make a really competitive medical school application, and all of the things that you're doing with PTK can certainly help you along that journey. And so I think we'll just think about the things that you're doing already with your chapters. You're establishing relationships with mentors, you're doing some undergraduate research, you are working towards securing those really strong letters of recommendation. So building those experiences is going to be really beneficial to you throughout these early years with your Phi Theta Kappa membership. You may be aware that PTK has several self-paced professional development courses that can kind of help you in this early, maybe exploration phase of your education and your career. So completing Healthcare Edge might be a good one to start with. It kind of has 4 different modules that you can use to really explore careers in healthcare, what you might do for your own personal physical and mental health care, how you can care for patients within a healthcare field that you might want to pursue. So that's something that you can take a look at. New this year is a really exciting program or partnership that we have with the Atlantis program. And you can certainly scan the QR code here to learn even more about it. I don't have all the answers for you, but if you want to, for the summer 2025, participate in at least a 2-week long study abroad program focused on kind of shadowing doctors in Europe across a variety of specialties. We do have a discount in place with the Atlantis program that you might want to kind of take a look at. I believe the application is going to be open for a little while yet, so you can start the application, see the different programs that they have available. But this is something, again, for you that are interested in pursuing this kind of medical degree beyond where you're at now. For those of you attending Catalyst next week, we have a handful of educational forums that you might want to check out related to STEM careers, medical school, these kinds of things, how to build resumes and strong resumes. I think the recommendation of keeping a really good journal of what you're doing and how much time you're doing it is going to be really helpful. And so these resume workshops might be a good thing for you to do. And I'm going to leave this slide up here for just a second because I'm going to introduce 2 additional speakers for us. We have a 34% discount with the American Medical Student Association. So I am going to stop sharing and I will introduce our 2 speakers, or our 2 collaborators with AMSA that are here. So first I'm going to introduce Emilia Chape. Emilia is the membership manager at AMSA, where she leads membership recruitment, retention, and engagement efforts while overseeing all the strategic partnerships that AMSA has, like the one with Phi Theta Kappa. With extensive experience in program management and stakeholder collaboration, she is passionate about driving membership growth and creating impactful opportunities for future medical professionals. And joining Emilia is Caleb Branch. Caleb currently serves as the National Pre-Medical Membership Co-Director for AMSA. His journey with them began at his alma mater, Emory University. Caleb is driven by his passion for health equity, primarily in maternal health and pediatrics, and he is deeply involved in AMSA's reproductive health project. Caleb is a student researcher at the University of Pennsylvania and plans to pursue an MD PhD. So hopefully that was kind of helpful, all that information on that application. And at Penn, Caleb conducts epidemiology research at the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania, working to improve quality of life for children and mothers living with HIV. So I'm going to turn it over to Emilia and Caleb.
Yes, thank you. Before I start, Caleb, do you want to say a couple of words since I'll run through the presentation very quickly?
Um, don't really have too much to add, but I am currently on the post. I'm doing a post back. So for anyone that does have questions, I know Tyler just mentioned out there, kind of curious about any opportunities to build up your research experience. I'm doing a post back, and it's a great opportunity to do like guided, have specific mentorship to help make sure you want to pursue an MD PhD. So happy to talk about that experience, the application process, and everything like that as well. But feel free to go ahead and get started on AMSA.
Perfect. All right. We'll make this quick because I know we're short on time. But so what is AMSA, right? And we're going to cover that very briefly. What's in it for you if you are to join AMSA and get your membership. And then lastly, we'll talk about our large event, our big event that's coming up this April in Washington, D.C. So we are an independent global association. We exist to support, inform, and inspire tomorrow's physicians. Think of AMSA as that necessary supplement to your medical journey. We really aim to create well-rounded physicians. And how do we do this? We have three main focus areas here at AMSA. So these three buckets are education, advocacy work, and I like to call it networking. It's support, but you'll see what I mean. So with education, we offer a ton of programming here at AMSA, a lot of it through our AMSA Academy umbrella, which you'll hear about more in a second. And advocacy, we practice what we preach here. We prepare you, we're going to train you, and then we actually go and we advocate on behalf of all the changes we're trying to create. So that the idea is that when you do become a physician, a practicing physician, you're going to be able to see all of the changes and all of the things that you've been working so hard to create. And these are the things that AMSA, of course, stands for and we're looking to affect, right? And then finally, networking. We have a large, vast, inclusive community of like-minded peers. You're not alone in this whole journey. Tons of alumni, people that you can connect with that will support you on this particular path that you're taking. This is a quick snapshot of who or what makes up AMSAT. We're very diverse, as you can see. Again, the 350,000 alumni through the ages, over 75 years now of work, of activism work, 30,000 members that are active at the moment, and we're all over the states and its territories, and of course, abroad. So what's in it for you if you become an AMSA member? We're here to create change, as we mentioned. You get to stand apart. It looks great on your CV, your resume, for anybody that's looking to apply for those programs that we're talking about today. A lot of networking opportunities, as we highlighted, and then, of course, tons of deals, discounts. If you like that, great. And also freebies, actually. So I know this is something that Jamie actually talked about briefly. So because you guys are PTK members, you do get a special discount if you're looking to join AMSA. And so for your pre-medical membership, which the way we look at it is for like 4 years, you would receive a discount of about 34%. But what do you get with that membership, right? You have access, and you'll see this on the left, our value wheel. Access to career boosters, leadership opportunities, hands-on trainings, discounts through our partners, mentorship opportunities, I mean, you name it. And I'm happy to share the slides with Jamie afterwards if she wants to send this to the registrants. I think that might be useful because I have a ton of QR codes here. Okay. The other great thing is with PTK, of course, we sponsor a scholarship. So if you're a PTK member, we have a scholarship available once a year for any PTK member that is aiming for a career in medicine. So certainly take a look on their website. I'm sorry I didn't add the link, but we can definitely provide that in the slides afterwards. Well, even more deals. There's always like a lot of deals here. So as a member, you have access to a number of discounts and even gifts from many of these partners that you see here. Also, a quick note, if after you become an AMSA member, make sure you connect with your AMSA chapter if there is one on campus. And certainly our chapters have been known to collaborate with PTK chapters in the past. So that's another way to go about it as well. If there isn't a chapter on your campus, you're welcome to launch one. And that again looks incredible on your CV as a leader, local leader, and then you can even apply for national leadership roles like Caleb has, right? And I will drop my email in the chat after the presentation. You can reach out for sure, and I'll explain how that process works. A couple of highlights about our AMSA Academy and our programming. You'll see that we have our Scholars Program. These are courses that focus on timely issues and topics, and you can get a certificate at the very end. New courses are going to be released in the summer. And another thing is our reproductive health project. So at AMSA, we've been able to access a number of grants that allow us to create incredible programs just for you guys. So one of them is the Repro Health Project. So if you're interested in free programming, access to scholarships, even through the grant, this would be another incredible place to access those kinds of opportunities. Very newly launched is our Research and Professional Development Directory. You'll gain access through here to paid and unpaid opportunities. So again, CV boosters, but these are areas where you can network, connect with someone, and even get a mentor. Speaking of mentorship, our last highlight of the Academy is our mentorship program. So we have a dedicated pre-medical program for you guys, a mentorship program where we pair you individually or we match you with a physician mentor, and they're going to provide you with guidance and support throughout your medical education. So all of this is under like the one large AMSA Academy that we have. Okay. Quick highlight on our Future Physicians for Change is coming. This is our annual convention. So all of the great work we're doing throughout the year, this is where we convene, we come together, we have fun, but we also learn so much. So this is coming up April 17th through 19th in Washington, D.C. Some of the things that are happening there, pre-health fair, think of it like a medical school fair. So if you're interested in talking to admission specialists, again, that's the place to be. Advocacy on Capitol Hill. Once more, we practice what we preach. You get trained in the morning, and then you go and talk to your representatives and try and create that change that we're talking about, right? Post your presentations. If you are wanting to present your research, you want to get judged, you want to get feedback, you can win prizes, financial too, that's a great opportunity as well. And simulation competition. If you're ready to compete against other undergraduate programs as a team and show off your clinical skills, get judged by physicians, get feedback, potentially again get mentors, network through that process, another incredible thing that you get to do at convention. More highlights here. We have a large exhibit hall. You see a picture there of Advocacy Day last year when we went to Capitol Hill. Is really inspiring, really great work that our young people get to do, and a lot of freebies throughout that entire weekend. Everybody leaves with full bags. Again, you guys are friends of AMSA, so you get a special code to get a discount. Right at the top, you see it, FP4C25 AMSA. You'll get $20 off the convention registration, so register now. Hotel prices are still within that block range, so make sure that you register as soon as possible and book that time. The scholar for this year was also invited to attend. So the person, Christy, who won the scholarship for the PTK AMSA scholarship will hopefully be in attendance. So if you get to participate and get a scholarship next year, maybe we'll see you there as well. So our general email is there in that slide. And again, I'll share mine in the chat in a second. And then don't forget to follow us in social media at AMSA National everywhere. This is how you'll find us. Yeah, that was it. Thank you.
Caleb, anything to add that you want to share? I know everybody gets so excited about these big events that, yeah, you can go to PTK Catalyst and then a week later you can go to the AMSA.
It's a busy, it's a good and busy week. A few weeks, it sounds. I honestly don't really have too much to add again. I recently graduated college this past spring, and so it has been an interesting transition, kind of just going through everything. And I will say one thing that has been very stable throughout all my different transitions was my involvement with AMSA. I joined as a freshman and then I became chapter president for like 2.5 years. So I did a lot of campus engagement and I'm excited to continue that throughout this role. And I would also just say, especially if there's any seniors out there, AMSA is another great way if you're taking gap years to just stay involved and keep in community with people that are interested in medicine, interested in pursuing just kind of a lot of things that you can kind of get separated from in that gap year. I'm doing almost full-time research right now, so it's kind of it's a separate part of my mind that's getting engaged with the AMSA work, which I really enjoy. So yeah, if you guys have truly any questions at all, and also I guess I don't know if we're still going to do the Q&A, but for Tyler or anyone else that's kind of considering MD PhD, something that's been really informative for my process and my journey is just thinking about or reorienting myself to think about the program that I'm specifically interested in. I majored in anthropology in college, but now I'm doing epidemiology research. So I'm kind of deciding on which one I want to lean into. But um, I know that you're kind of thinking about, does machine learning or does like a programming project count? That's research. I would say 10 out of 10. But depending on the program that you're applying for, it could be weighted differently because that's definitely quantitative research. But if you plan to do more wet lab, it kind of depends. Yeah, just wanted to hop onto that.
Great. And I see we've got a couple of questions in the chat that I think maybe are more specific to Sachi. So I'm going to put my information up here. So if anybody has questions that we don't get to, I think it looks like she's answering that last question in the chat. So if you have other questions that we weren't able to get to, this was such a wonderful session. I was so happy to be a part of it. And to our panelists, Sachi, Amelia, Caleb, thank you so much for your time and your expertise and your insights today. But if you are an attendee and have questions, you can certainly email me and I will get them to the person that we need to get them to. I will also be sending out the recording of this session to everyone who registered. So if you had to leave earlier, if you came in late or anything like that, we will get to those, get those sent out probably later this week. So that is our time. And again, thank you everyone for being here and participating. And I'll keep all these questions and we'll make sure we get them answered, even if we have to do them offline. So thank you all again so very much.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. And good luck, everyone.